In simple terms, fear is the response to perceived physical or emotional danger. Fear is your brain's way of recognizing a threat and prompting you to protect yourself. If we were in ancient times, our fear response would be necessary to keeping us safe. Nowadays, not so much. We're not facing imminent danger like people were back then. Sure, there are other dangers that are present in our current times, and fear is absolutely appropriate in those situations. However, there are other situations where fear is not warranted. We just have to train our brains to not be fearful of those situations. In this episode, I'm sharing 6 money fears hurting your success. My goal is to help you work through these fears and see what amazing things come out on the other side. Hey there, I'm Raya Reeves, and over a decade ago, I turned my life around through budgeting. I went from being an overspender deep in credit card debt to being the founder and full-time money coach of City Girl Savings. Now, I help women work towards their dream life and tap into their financial power one budget at a time. I fully believe you can live a life you love with a budget, and I'm living proof. The weekly City Girl Savings podcast focuses on the intersection of money and the City Girl lifestyle. Join me every week along with some special guests as I share my experiences, advice, and guidance on navigating life and money as an experience-loving millennial. Now, before I get into the money fears hurting your success, I want to spend a little bit more time discussing how fear can be misleading in certain circumstances. And I will give you an example from my previous experience with fear. So back when I worked for that major financial institution and I was growing in my career, an opportunity came up for me to give a big presentation to the department leader. Okay, so I had to put together a presentation. I had to present it to him. And as a result, hopefully my proposal would have resulted in us moving forward with what I was presenting. I was incredibly nervous. My heart was racing. My palms were sweaty. I was thinking about it all day. I was practicing so much and I was very anxious. But for what? Like, when I think back, like, what was I so afraid of? I wasn't in any physical or emotional danger. And outside of the bank, no one even knew who this leader was. Like, yes, in my department, he was a big deal. But if I were to go to Walmart and say his name to someone, that person wouldn't even know or understand or care. And so that was such an awakening moment for me, because it really does prove this notion that fear can exist in situations where maybe our brain thinks we're in physical or emotional danger, but we're really not. So we have to recognize it and train our brains to do something differently. So I thanked my brain for triggering a fear response to keep me safe. I appreciate what it was doing, but concluded that I wasn't in danger. It wasn't necessary for me to have this response of anxiety and my heart racing and sweaty palms and just being incredibly nervous. And while this doesn't mean that I was never nervous again in future presentations, because I think, you want to do a good job. Like, there are instances where those nerves make sense. It did make it easier though in the future. So once I recognized that all of this response was a fear response that really wasn't warranted, it did help me in the future when I was in situations like that. Almost so much so that I would seek out those situations. So any opportunity I have to give a presentation to a group of people, as uncomfortable and nerve-wracking as it initially feels, I always say yes, because I want to work through that fear. I totally understand like my body's response to it, but I have to check myself and check my brain and remind myself that, hey, I'm not in danger. And in fact, this is helping me to prove that I'm not in danger and helping me to do bigger and better things. So if you have instances like that where you've had a fear response or you've been scared and nervous and anxious, and you really take the time to think about if you're in true danger or not, I think it's a big wake-up call for most of us. All right, let's dive into the money fears that are hurting your success. First one, fear of investing. When it comes to the fear of investing, I think there are two big drivers here, and it's a lack of knowledge and a scarcity mindset. Most people are scared of investing because they don't know what to do, and it sounds intimidating. Terms like stocks, the market, and other investing jargon terrify people because it's not commonly known or understood. And I don't fully blame people for this. I mean, I think society plays a huge role in keeping people in the dark about the importance of investing. So there's a little bit of like societal changes that need to happen. I definitely think that if more people knew about it, wealth can be spread more evenly, and that doesn't always benefit the ultra wealthy. But that's a conversation for another podcast episode. Today, let's focus on why people have a fear of investing and going back to the lack of knowledge. The reality is investing is something that isn't commonly taught. It's not talked about as much, and that's changing nowadays. But the reality is investing isn't that hard to understand. And there are people, resources, platforms out there to help bridge that knowledge gap. Myself and the City Girl Savings blog and podcast included. I definitely want you to check out episode 107, Adding Investing to Your Money Goals with Mark Russell, for some additional insight into the importance of investing and how you can get started even on a small scale. But ultimately, the power is in the individual's hands to bridge that knowledge gap, right? Like you have to go out and seek the information you need to get started with investing. Investing is truly one of the best ways to build true long-term wealth. So if you don't know what to do, you have to take the initiative to go seek the resources and the guidance to learn what it takes. So if you're afraid to invest because you don't know what to do, take action to bridge that knowledge gap. Now, the second driver I mentioned was a scarcity mindset. And people have a fear of investing because they don't want to lose money. Maybe they have had a bad experience in the past. Maybe they know someone who lost money. Regardless of what is driving that fear, they are scared to invest because it means there's a potential to lose money. And I will say this is true, right? When you invest in the stock market, there is an opportunity for your balance to go up and down, right? Like the possibility of losing money is there. However, the goal of investing is to keep your money there long term, right? So if you're thinking of investing as like, let me make money quick, that's when you'll probably see yourself losing money. But over the course of time, the historical rate of return on investments in the stock market is 8 to 10%. So historically speaking, while your portfolio balance may go up and down over time, you should have that 8 to 10% rate of return. And as long as you're willing to stick it out, you're going to see that. But I do also want to add that like no risk, no reward. So yes, there's a potential for you to lose money in the stock market. Nobody knows exactly what the future is going to bring, but no risk, no reward. If you want the 8 to 10% rate of return, you're going to have to be a little bit risky. It's just the way it goes. But I think if you can stick it out, stay in it for the long term, ride the waves, the highs and lows that will come with investing in the stock market, if you can power through all of those things and not let that fear of losing or that scarcity mindset hold you back, you can come out on top for sure. The next money fear hurting your success is the fear of digital banking or high yield savings accounts. So I've talked about high yield savings accounts quite a bit on this podcast because they truly are a game changer in terms of making money with the money you have, especially right now when the national interest rates are high. But a high yield savings account is an account that is offered through an online bank. So an online bank means you can't go into a physical branch. There's no brick and mortar locations, but because of that, they can afford to pay out more in interest to their customers because they don't have the high expenses and costs of running and operating brick and mortar locations. So I think the thought that someone can't actually go talk to someone face to face when it comes to their money is terrifying for some people. So they don't even want to deal with anything digital or online because they have this fear of, well, maybe my money is getting lost in the ether. The fear of digital banking includes, not seeing a physical branch person or representative or, actual location, thinking your money is going to get lost in the digital system, and fearing that maybe you're being watched, right? So these are all common fears that drive this notion of not wanting to get into digital banking. And I do understand it to a point, but I think where we're at in society and the times that we're in, a lot of stuff is done digitally. Even your brick and mortar branch, your Wells Fargo, Bank of America, a lot of times we're functioning from their app or their website, right? So we're already in the digital banking system. It's just if something were to go wrong, you could literally walk into a branch and talk to someone. You can't necessarily do that with an online bank, but that's not to say there aren't customer service opportunities. You can email, you can chat, you can call. So you can get in contact with someone. I think another important thing to note here is that just because your money is with an online bank doesn't mean your money isn't as safe. So just like your Wells Fargo, Bank of America are FDIC insured, so are the bank accounts through online banks. So your money is just as protected in those types of banks as well. And I understand it's probably more comforting to see like physical cash, you see it next to your checking account or you see it in your checking account. But the reality is if you're not putting your savings, so money that you have no intention of touching, in an account that's generating you 4% in interest, you're losing money. Inflation alone makes your cash worth less in the future. So I definitely want you to work through this fear of digital and online and get yourself set up with a high yield savings account. Do things like investing that can help you protect yourself from growing inflation or rising cost of living so that your value of your dollars are worth more over time and not losing over time. Honesty time. Money management is not rocket science. It just feels that way because we tie our emotions, experiences, and sometimes our self-worth to our money. That needs to change, and I'm on a mission to help drive that change. In my new free masterclass, I'm sharing 3 ways to master your money and budget to see instant results. I'm going to show you how to level up your finances so you can begin to see forward progress with your goals and have something to show for the money you work so hard for. The masterclass is only here for a short time and it's happening soon. So save your spot now by going to citygirlsavings.com/masterclass. I can't wait to see you there. The next money fear hurting your success is the fear of an emergency. And let me just say, I completely understand the fear of an emergency because if you have a lot to lose, right? The more you have, the more you grow, the more you gain, the more you can lose if something goes wrong. But I think that mindset and that fear is a losing battle for a few reasons. First, you are what you think about. So if you're constantly fearing or thinking about worst case scenario, I feel like you're putting out into the universe that this should be the reality, right? So if you're constantly thinking about this going wrong, that going wrong, things are going to go wrong. And that's not to say that if you're always positive, nothing goes wrong. But if you're just constantly in this state of negativity and fear and anxiety, things are going to happen to grow those fears and those thoughts and those anxieties. So you have to be able to kind of level set with yourself and put things in place so that if something does happen, because it's inevitable, if something does happen, you're covered, whether it's through insurance or a savings account or, having multiple streams of income. There are things you can do to protect yourself from things going wrong. And, you can only control yourself. This was a very hard thing for me to grasp and understand, and I still struggle with it today. Things outside of your control can happen that create a terrible situation. There's nothing you could have done about it. There's nothing you could do about it. Trying to fight that, trying to prevent things outside of your control from happening is a recipe for failure. You cannot fight it. Things are going to happen the way they're meant to. And, you can't necessarily change that. And whether that means an emergency or not, like maybe it's something really good that's out of your control that happens, or it's something really bad. I think the important thing is to let go of that need to know, to control, to manage and maintain. Let that go. It's going to help tremendously. And it's going to just take a lot of pressure and anxiety and stress off of your shoulders. And I'm talking to myself here too, because I have a tendency to try to control as many outcomes as possible. And when things don't go the way I plan them to, or things don't go, how I would have controlled them, it throws you back. It throws me back and can get me in a reactive state. So being mindful of that, it's not going to always be perfect, but I think consciousness is very big here. So try to focus only on what you can control. Now, in terms of money, fearing an emergency can condone bad behavior as well. So here's an example. I had a client with significant credit card debt, and our main focus was to pay the debt off as quickly as possible. But during our weekly sessions, I noticed that she kept using her credit card. Like one specific credit card balance actually kept growing. And I asked her, why? Why are you using it? And it was in her wallet. And I said, okay, why is it still in your wallet? None of your cards should be in your wallet, so you can't use them. And she said it was in her wallet because if she had an emergency, she wanted to have it. So we talked about this. I asked her, when was the last time you actually had an emergency? And she couldn't remember. She couldn't tell me. So I told her she's adding to her debt because she's keeping this card around for emergencies, but spending it on non-necessities. And so we had to work to shift her focus to building up a savings to cover emergencies, and then refocus to paying down debt with the card out of her wallet. So I think this is where the fear of an emergency can condone bad behavior. Basically, you're so scared that an emergency is going to happen, you put a credit card or, account you shouldn't be using in easy use manner. So you have it in your wallet and you use it for things that are not an emergency because you haven't fixed your bad spending behavior. But you justify it because, well, if an emergency happens, at least I have this card. So it's definitely going to take, again, being conscious and mindful, but working through that. And I think the fear of an emergency can really keep you from seeing success with your money. In the case of my client who overspent, but also in the case of you hoarding money that could be leveraged to help you make more. If you are so focused on an emergency happening and making sure you have so much money put to the side for this emergency, you could be missing out on opportunities to grow your money. And that leads me into the next fear, which is the fear of a low checking account balance. Now, I see this specific fear a lot with a certain set of clients. So these specific clients make very good money. So they have a large paycheck, so large amounts of money coming in. They have large checking account balances, but they have no savings or very low savings account balances and credit card debt. So it's been a trend that I've seen with some of the clients I've worked with. The money in their checking account can totally wipe out their debt, but they don't use it for that. They keep it in their checking account because they have a fear of a low checking account balance. And with these clients, or even other clients who don't like low checking account balance, I have to help them shift their mindset, because the reality is money in your checking account in excess of bills and, you're spending money in a small buffer does nothing except make you feel better, right? So any extra money you have in your checking account outside of bills and spending and maybe a little wiggle room for stuff to come up, anything in excess of that is purely there to make you feel better. It's not gaining any interest. Checking accounts don't have interest. It's not helping you grow your money, right? It's not being invested. It's just sitting there. So it's actually costing you money because if we think about inflation and the cost of living, it's only there to make you feel better. And I think people want to feel good. They want to feel like they have money, but in reality, they have debt and they don't have a savings. So like their perspective needs to shift because they're getting good feelings out of things that aren't actually conducive to them growing in their finances. I really think if you have extra money in your checking account that could be used to pay off debt, for example, then you are actually costing yourself more money because you're not earning interest on that checking account balance, but you're paying interest on your debt. You're literally losing money. You would actually save more money by paying off your debt with the extras that you have in your checking account. Just yesterday, I kind of had this conversation with a coaching client because she had spent her money, right down to the wire in preparation for the next pay period, which we had planned for, right? And that was making her nervous because her balance was very close to zero. And I had to remind her that just because she sees zero in her checking account does not mean she doesn't have money. I had to help her understand that her determination of wealth is not strictly based on the balance in checking. It's based on the value of all of her assets. So all of her savings accounts, everything that we're putting money to the side for, right? Getting it out of checking and putting it in places that are actually going to help her grow. And it's a constant reminder. It's not something that you just say it once and it sticks. You have to check yourself and retrain your brain to understand that your wealth is not based solely on your checking account, but accumulation of all of the assets you have. Checking accounts are only one form of assets, and there are plenty of others with many more financial benefits. So if you have a fear of a low checking account balance, make it a point to open your mind to looking at all of your asset accounts and understanding that as long as you have money in savings and you're putting money in investments and you're paying your debt down, it's okay if your checking account balance is low. The next money fear that could be hurting your success is the fear of spending your money without getting a tangible return. So have you ever considered investing in a coach, a trainer, a course, or even a workshop only to see it as you losing money? So it's just another bill. It's just another expense. If the course was $500, instead of seeing all of the value you could get and the changes you could make and the results that could come from this course, you only saw yourself losing $500. I think the fear of spending money without a tangible return is one that could be incredibly detrimental to your money success. Oftentimes, those investments result in you learning what you need to change about yourself. And those changes, the things that you know you need to change and knowing what to do next is what actually brings the results. So investing in something that doesn't necessarily yield a tangible return does require a little faith. But like I said earlier, no risk, no reward. If you're not willing to invest in yourself or take a chance on an unknown outcome, you'll always stay where you are. And I'm not saying invest in everything, but if you find something to invest in that you know you truly need, but you're scared, I want you to really think about what could be on the other side of that investment. Don't see it as you're spending your money and you're not getting anything in return. See it as I'm investing in improving my knowledge and growing in this particular area so that the results I get in the future are exponential. The final money fear hurting your success is the fear of never having enough. Now, this is a dangerous one because the reality is there will always be more, better, bigger. There will always be someone with more. There will always be a better way to do it. And there's power in that. One, it can hold you back because you feel like what you don't have isn't good enough, but it can also empower you to continue growing. And I think to break through this fear of never having enough, you first have to appreciate what you do have. So gratitude is the antidote to feeling like you never have enough. And once you can appreciate where you are, what you have, then you need to identify the things or the goals that matter to you, the ones that are worth working towards. And those are the things you go after. Staying in this constant state of fearing you'll never have enough means you won't see opportunities for investment. You won't take those opportunities. You won't see opportunities for you to make more money or opportunities that will actually make you happier in general. You'll be holding on so tightly to what you do have because you're scared you'll never have enough, but you'll be miserable because there's so much more you don't have. And that's just the reality of it. There's always more, bigger, better. So appreciate where you are, appreciate what you have, and identify what's worth working towards and strive for those things, work towards those things. And don't do it from a place of, I'm not happy with what I have. Do it from a place of, I greatly appreciate what I have. Let me go out and get some things that truly matter to me. So if you have any of the money fears I discussed today, it is time to break free. They are causing more harm than good and can be keeping you from amazing outcomes. I want you to take some time to reflect on what fears you have with money, then research some ways of releasing those fears. I also want you to check out episode 10, Conquering the Fear of Failure and Redefining Success. In the past, a fear of failure was something I had, and I walk through how I powered through that fear and redefined what success looks like to me. So definitely check that out. It'll be in the show notes, but it's time to break through these money fears and be happier and healthier as a result. Thank you so much for letting me be the money coach in your ear today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the City Girl Savings Podcast and you feel empowered and motivated to take the next step in the journey to your dream life. Remember, if someone like me, a millennial who loves to travel, new experiences, and iced coffees can live a life they love on a budget, you can too.